Hello, welcome to my other show, AhMuse. My name is Susan Rushton, and this is the show on which I'm privileged to, I'm tickled to, I'm delighted to, I'm honored to talk to people who have been aroused by the muse. That's what these guys have been. And the muses in Greek history is certainly not like the muses now. The muses now deal with communication, among other things, and that's what I'm talking about. These guys are deeply involved with ham radio. Ham radio. And and they are not young people, with good reason, because ham radio is ancient. I would like to introduce you to Frank Boardman. Thank you, Frank, for joining me. His email is Kilo, 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 number 1, Fox, Mike, Bravo at AOL.com. And I'm assuming you were once in the military.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Fox Mike Bravo, that sounds like it. And Lou Frank, thank you, Lou, for joining me. And Lou's email is lmfrank@me.com. And they are members of Western Placer Amateur Radio Club. In other words, WPARC.us, wpark.us. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me, and tell me why you're involved with ham radio.
Well, it's interesting because my father started a radio store in 1945, Ease Radio.
Where was this?
And this was in Chicago.
Okay.
I grew up in Chicago.
I heard that. I've got it. I hear it there. Yeah.
And I spent many hours in his store watching the repairmen, first with radios, then with TVs, and carrying the tube caddy, and always interested in ham radio.
But what is ham radio?
And ham radio, boy, is the ability to talk in a microphone and broadcast, in effect, although it's not legally broadcast. You should be talking with somebody else. But when you talk, you never know who's listening, because everybody could be listening.
Oh,
in
okay.
In fact, Frank, you may have... What is ham radio?
It's like telephone,
party network.
Party line. Yeah.
Yes, okay. And anybody could pick up and hear what you're saying. Okay. And you never know who's hearing what you're saying. Which brings a really to mind an incident. I had a vacation home at one time in Forbes-town and lived in Southern Cal. Made the 500-mile trip in the winter just to check on the house that all was well. I pulled into the driveway, which on 3 acres was about 2 blocks long. Mm-hmm. I got 1 car length, and a tree had fallen across the road. So I hopped over, got into the house, picked up the phone, which was dead. Of course, there was no power, so it shouldn't surprise me. Went back to the car, picked up on ham radio, and I called out. I said, "Is there anybody listening on the repeater?" I knew there was a local repeater on the Buttes that I could call, and a ham picked up.
Near Marysville.
In Marysville.
Yeah, okay.
And the Sutter Buttes. And I said, "Could you call my wife and tell her I'm okay after that 500-mile drive?" And he did, and she was happy with that. I had a good night's sleep, got up the next morning to hear chainsaws. I hiked out, and there's a couple of guys cutting up the tree, blocking my driveway. Didn't know them from Adam. One of them said, I'm a ham. I heard you on the repeater. I thought you might need some help. And that was one of my wonderful memories of ham radio.
Yes. Okay. Since we're talking about wonderful memories, give us one of your wonderful memories, please.
Well, I don't know that I can think of any offhand, but I can answer the question that hams.
Okay.
We don't know we don't know the origin of ham, why they're called hams, unless you're hamming it up, perhaps. But in any case, there is no origin for ham radio. It doesn't stand for amateur radio.
Okay.
I mean, it's connected with amateur radio, and we're called hams, but the reason is unknown.
Okay.
So I remember that was one of your questions you had asked.
Okay. So, Lou gave you his one of his stories. I'm sure you have more about the benefits of being involved with ham radio. I used to, as you probably heard this before, I used to work for the Auburn Journal, and in 1989, I had done some research on ham radios and ham people, and so when the Loma Prieta earthquake happened, my parents lived in the South Bay in near San Francisco, and I couldn't get hold of them. That was an unnerving situation, and every time I tried the phone call, it didn't work. Beep 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 beep. So I contacted the one of the ham guys I knew and said, I need this help. Would you please, this is my parents' phone number, can you get connected somehow? And I came out of a meeting a couple of days later, maybe the next day, and I saw a message saying, Sally says they're okay. And that still gives me chills of elegance. I just love that story. I love thinking about it. And I can't thank that guy, the guy I asked, but so I'm thanking you guys for being involved with ham radio. What got you started?
Well, I did time in the military and was associated with radios and never paid attention to them.
What do you mean you were, if you never paid attention to them, but you were associated with them?
I meant as a hobby. I was assigned to fix them,
Oh.
repaired them, and did all that kind of stuff, but I didn't care to use them.
Oh, okay.
Because in the military you have maintainers and you have operators.
All right.
And the twain never meet.
Okay.
And in fact, the operators are always telling the maintainers are always telling the operators they're the ones that are breaking it. So that's why I have to go fix it, in any case. It wasn't until later in life when I was looking for a hobby that I picked up amateur radio.
Okay. And so what do you like about it?
The intrigue, the ability to use my skills to make things in ham radio, because nothing's, well, I take that back. There's a lot that is made commercially now for ham radios, but in the old days it wasn't, and we still have the need to get our hands dirty, to get in there and play with the radios and the equipment, the ancillary equipment.
What is the point of playing with the radio? What
to make it work better.
Okay.
And playing
farther,
with radios.
Or
Yes, but the radio is, don't take it literally, it's usually the antenna we're playing with to make it better, more efficient. Because the radio is nothing without an antenna.
okay.
And in fact, the antenna is one of the most important pieces. Because
Why?
It's what gets out.
Okay.
The radio just transmits to the end of that connector.
Okay.
You have to get it out, down the wire, and out to the radiator, the antenna.
So I think of antennas and I think of my ancient TV's antenna. And so when I think of antennas for ham radio, am I thinking of the same sort of thing?
Pretty close, pretty close. But TV antennas usually have those elements that hang out. They look like, what do I call
A
them?
dipole of rabbit ears, they used to
Okay,
call them.
All right,
yeah.
good.
And now we actually use some antennas that look like rabbit ears, called buddy poles or dipoles, and there is many different frequency bands to ham radio, and so the different bands behave differently, and you need different types of antennas for them. So that's probably one of the biggest areas of experimenting with today is the antennas, and what's also new is called software-defined radios. That is, instead of building the electronic circuitry that operated in the old days, each of the elements needed to make a radio, today part of it is in what we'd call hardware, and then it gets digitized, goes to a computer, and half of your radio is in software in the computer.
Which means that there's money involved. All of this stuff is
Yes.
money. The more you learn, the more you do, the more you want,
Right.
and the more you hear about, and I've seen these photographs on your website with these ham people gathered, and so have you heard about? I can imagine. And let me try. Joe did this, and this is what he's done, and this is what. And so you are your wives as eager as you are?
Probably not. It's an expensive hobby, and they're always the purse strings.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of ham radio. If you want the latest and greatest, it's the expensive. But there are things called boat anchors, which are the big old radios. Some people today have bought old AM broadcast transmitters and the older style radio receivers.
And these things still work?
These things still work. There's a whole group that builds equipment. And
excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you again.
Yes.
There's a whole group that builds this equipment of
Ancient equipment.
ancient equipment, and they really fix it,
Refurbish
maintain
it,
it,
right.
refurbish
So it's
it.
modern ancient equipment.
It works. No,
It might not have worked before, but now it does.
correct.
Oh,
Some of the parts, noticeably capacitors, die with age. Most of the other components don't. So they'll take an old radio, replace the capacitors, and it works just as good as the day it was born.
wow.
And so there are still some real collectors that are buying radios from the 60s, from the 70s,
Where
which
do you
is
find this
considered
stuff?
old. There are swap meets.
Okay.
And so you'll find them at the swap meets.
And you learn about the swap meets
yes.
from your fellow
hams. It's
hams and on the website.
When you see the term ham fest, then you know specifically it's a flea market for ham radio equipment. Ham fest.
Yes, and it's probably not reasonable for a person who doesn't know anything about ham radio to go to one of those things and expect to know what they're talking about.
Well, they can go enjoy the antique equipment.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I love going because
Really?
it reminds me of the things that I was dying to buy in the 60s.
You shouldn't go.
And I don't have room to buy it now, but at least I could see it.
Yes.
And so I know what it
lick your
looks
lips.
like, and it brings up wonderful memories of the things I wanted. And I hear hams talking on the radio that do have this equipment. And he says, yep, now I was able to to buy it,
Yeah.
to purchase it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't afford it back then in the 50s.
But now you can.
But now
you don't have any space for it because you've filled your house up.
For me
already.
personally.
With radio equipment, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But you were talking about emergency communications, and I have here a copy that I got I was fortunate enough, I got a great job handling emergency traffic.
Lou,
Yes.
hold that up again and longer than you think it might be necessary. And it's just we're not going to see the words, but there's a lot to this. This is emergency stuff?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of thought has gone into this.
This is
And-
relative to the situation you had at Loma Prieta.
Yeah.
When you contacted your ham, and the ham said, yeah, I'll take care of that message, that's exactly what he's talking about. He is relating an award for a situation he was involved in.
You got an award
Yes.
for helping.
For helping.
Great.
It was a Sunday morning, and there's a group of us that were on the radio, and I heard somebody calling break, 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 which is usually if you want to get a chance to talk and it's important. And so this person said, go up 3, telling me, go away from the group, I want to talk to you. So I went up 3 kilohertz, I was on 40 meters. And
I know what that means.
Yeah.
I know all about that anyway.
There's different bands, and 40 meters is one of the common ones.
We have a lot to talk about.
So he said he was a ham out camping, and he was up in Washington, the state of Washington.
Excuse me, he was out camping, but not out in the wilderness without a car. He had stuff with him.
Correct.
Okay.
And so
But he was in
there
trouble.
in ham radio, there is contests. And so he was out setting up to enter a contest to talk to people,
Okay.
to make contacts. And somebody came through the woods saying they needed help. There was a bad motorcycle accident on one of the fire roads. And so he went over to that location, used their local handheld radios to talk back and forth. There were a couple hams there. I picked up, they needed emergency service. So I found out the details, called 911 to find they didn't respond to they only responded to local emergencies, but going through the phone people and then back through 911 operators, I finally got a hold of a fire and rescue group up in the county that they were in Washington, the state of Washington. And I relayed information as to their location. They sent out rescue queues. I stayed on the air, and it took them about an hour to get there. And they, one person was very badly hurt, and they were able to bring him out of the woods, bring in a helicopter, and take him off to the hospital.
Well, congratulations.
And I stayed on the air until I got the call, thank you,
Wonderful.
and the emergency was taken care of.
To make this more awe-inspiring, how far away were you from this incident?
Well, I was in Mission Viejo, California,
Which is in South California.
Southern
Hundreds of miles
California,
away.
Yeah.
hundreds of miles away.
Yeah.
And he was up in Washington,
Yeah.
the state of Washington.
Well, that's thrilling.
So it was thrilling. Unfortunately, it dealt with an accident because I never want somebody to be hurt.
No.
And you don't always get a chance to help. We had a landslide years ago in Southern California and Dana Point, and the Red Cross lost communications with the truck that they sent out, And one of the other hams in the group I was in actually went and found the truck, radioed to me, and I carried messages over to the Red Cross so they knew their truck was okay and what was going on with the scene of the problem. So I've had a few incidents.
Yeah,
of
doesn't
actually,
have to be fun.
Correct.
Oh.
Well, it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
You don't look for it, but kind of that's what you prepare for. Right now, Mondays through Fridays, from 8:30 to about 9:30, I am on the radio with a net called the California Rescue Communications 40-meter net. And there's about 200 hams involved in Washington, Oregon, California, Utah, and we practice. Maybe 100 people sign in every day, and we're prepared should there be like a major disaster somewhere. We're prepared to relay messages, usually health and welfare.
Yeah.
During the fires when they set up.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah, when they set up places for the victims to go, there were typically hams there that until they got cell phones set up in temporary locations, hams were there to relay health and welfare messages.
I am
and
thrilled
needs of the shelter.
That there are so many involved.
Yeah. So many hams keep their equipment, they maintain it, and they are ready to respond.
Yeah.
And that's what's different, in that they're practiced, they're
when you say that's what's
talking.
Different,
well,
sir, what do you mean that's what's different?
It's different than other organized groups that, like CERT and the fact if you want to maintain a large group of people with communication skills, ham radios do that as volunteers without being paid just for the thrill of it.
Yes.
Or just for they feel it's their contribution to the community.
Yeah. And I love the idea of there being a community. A community is a great thing, and I thought it was so small.
Oh, there's a national organization. In fact, ham radios, ham operators are mostly, I will say, I guess, or many of us are associated with the ARRL, American Radio Relay League. Now, remember what he said he did. His position was to relay the information from the first responders or actually get the first responders to the incident. So all his work was relay. The situation that happened to you was a relay situation. So back in, 1913 or something, some guy just figured out, we ought to have a national organization of all these amateurs, because amateur radio goes back to the late 1800s. So this guy figured out we should have American Radio Relay League, and that's the whole premise of us.
Yeah.
So you have a problem because the radios in those times didn't get very far. So you talk to me, I'll talk to him, and I'll talk to you, and then you back, and and that's what how it got born.
It's more than the. Oh my goodness, we've got only 5 more minutes. Wow. So
You're right.
so it's more than a can, a string, and a can, and a string, and a can. The idea of it started in a serious way that we've got to do this. This is important, and it still is important. But you guys are having a heck of a good time, even as you're working to be good citizens, to help others. you make your quote toys, your hobby
Right.
better, bigger, funner,
More useful.
and yourselves more useful as well.
Western Placer Amateur Radio Club supports several events in communities. One that comes to mind right away is the Tour de Lincoln, which is a bicycle club or a bicycle. What do I want to call it? A bicycle event. A bunch of bicyclists to get together. Sorry about bicyclists. Anyway, they get together.
It's okay. He's a ham.
And they do these 100-mile rides for fun. In any case, but 100 miles out is a long way for a guy on a bicycle. So if he has a problem, how does he get back? Well, we support that by having radio communications all along the route.
Yeah.
So if he has a problem, he just walks over to the local ham, says, "Hey, I need help.
Water.
I need a chain repaired.
Yeah.
Or take me back to someplace."
Yeah.
So the ham radio guys respond in such manner.
Yeah. And I'm aware that at least ham radio guys used to be involved with the 100-mile run. Are they still?
Probably so, and they're certainly involved with Baker to Vegas. There's another large event. It's a national event with a bunch
Bakersfield to Vegas.
No. Baker to Vegas, a little town in the middle of nowhere in the Mojave Desert, and
Baker.
It's
okay.
A relay
race.
It's a bunch of law enforcement guys that get together. It started out as a joke, but nonetheless, and it's 120 miles, and they run. It's a relay race, but in any case, once again, they're out in the middle of the desert, and they got ham radio supporting it.
Yes. Before we leave, today is your ham licensing day.
Correct.
Right.
And they told me they'd be really excited. And it's clear they're really excited. What does that mean?
We're inducting new hams. That's exciting.
You get a ham license by taking an exam. It is to get a federal license. These exams are administered by volunteer ham examiners, and we are
Ham examiners?
Ham examiners. So we get the materials from the ARRL, and there are several groups that N5YI, there's different organizations that support the testing that meets the FCC requirements. And we are testing tonight. We conduct our tests at pizza at the Round Table Pizza.
What a good place to do that.
And so people just come and sign up and meet the criteria, which is only registering with the FCC first, and then they come and we administer the exams. We have a gentleman coming tonight who, this is his third time, because there's three elements. There is the tech, element 2, there is the general, element 3.
By tech, you mean technology?
No, technician.
Technician.
Think of it as levels. Level 1, level 2, level 3.
Okay.
Of knowledge.
Technician.
Right.
Good, good.
And then a general class, and then extra class. And each of those allow certain bands, I'll show you quickly, more privileges. This is a band chart that you could see at least the different colors identify what the different levels can do.
Okay.
And this gentleman
probably have a picture of that.
Yeah. This gentleman is legally blind. He took his technician license with us,
level 2,
and then he took his general with us, and tonight he's coming to take his extra. So we are very proud that he chose us to administer the tests. But we are always happy to help people interested in obtaining a license and enjoying ham radio.
Yes.
Hams are just a fun-loving group that are really helpful. I met Frank through ham radio, and he has been very helpful to me.
Good.
On a personal level.
Even though he just He didn't start when he was 6.
Oh, and neither did I. I actually did not get my ham license.
Oh no, that's not what I mean. You were deeply involved with radios when you.
When I was young, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Gentlemen, thank you very much. People, friends, if you're interested in Western Placer Amateur Radio Club, and you certainly should be, WPARC.us. Take a look. Frank Boardman, Kilo 1 Fox Mike Bravo at AOL.com, and Lou Frank, LM Frank at me.com. Gentlemen, thank you very much for being such a
Thank you for having us.
guest.
We really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, and I'll see you again.